Hello, I'm Claire Freeman, Director of the Natural History Society of Northumbria. Welcome to this week's talk, one in a series of NHSN's Winter Nature Talks programme. As a society, we've been sharing talks since the year we were founded in 1829. And in those early years, many people would have been isolated in their pursuit of natural history. So over those 191 years since, we have been bringing people together to hear about the latest discoveries and environmental findings. This year, digital technology, we hope, will enable us to share the talks with many more people to inspire them to care for and protect nature. Please do visit our website to find out more about NHSN, and also you might like to keep in touch with us for news about North East nature. I'll now hand over to one of my colleagues who will introduce this week's speakers, and I hope you enjoy the talks.
Hello, and welcome to this evening's Natural History Society talks. I'm Chris Redfern, and I'm one of the Society trustees and the ornithology section lead. We have two speakers tonight, and we'll be taking on a virtual trip to Coquet Island. I'm very excited to welcome Paul Morrison, otherwise known as Captain Coquet, who will give the first talk. Coquet Island is a unique RSPB reserve off the Northumberland coast that the Natural History Society had a hand in creating many years ago. And this year is a rather special anniversary. Paul has been in charge of Coquet Island for many years, and during that time he's masterminded a steady increase in the number of roseate terns breeding there. Paul provides a huge amount of energy, dynamism and humour, which keeps the island afloat as a major seabird breeding colony in the northeast. So sit back and enjoy the trip.
Welcome to the Coquet Island presentation. I'm Paul Morrison and head a team of dedicated coqueteers who drive the management effort out here. I'm sharing this presentation with David Kinchin-Smith, Assistant Warden for Coquet. I'll be setting the historic context of management, outline the threats, and present the management deployed. David will describe the current state of play. We've been lucky enough to have been allowed to be operational throughout the pandemic. Coquet lies 2 kilometres off the Northumberland coast, opposite the port of Amble, at the mouth of the River Coquet. The island is tiny, just over 6 hectares, not including the intertidal area, which is significant and included in the SSSI designation. The main habitat is a flat, grassy plateau, now dominated by Yorkshire fog and nettles, and surrounded by a low cliff and a small shingle beach at the south end, the latter which acts as the airport for the arrivals and departures for many of the birds on the assemblage. The dominant feature on the island is the lighthouse, which is our accommodation. Coquet has been managed as a bird sanctuary since the RSPB took on the management of the reserve in 1970. The main focus of management has been on the Tern assemblage, although there are some 70,000 nesting seabirds on Coquet. A huge proportion of that assemblage is puffins, and they do well on Coquet. A census undertaken every 5 years, last year was the census year, and 25,000 pairs were recorded. Similar numbers were estimated this year. The rest of the assemblage comprises eider, sadly a species in decline, black-headed gull in huge numbers, a few kittiwake, fulmar and large gulls. In the next few slides, I will outline the threats to the assemblage, but they are summarised here. I haven't a separate slide for botulism, but it is an occasional problem, usually striking large gulls, but in recent years also affecting terns, mainly Arctics, but also 1 or 2 commons. Disturbance is a significant problem. Inadvertent disturbance by kayakers and paddleboarders, etc., but we do have to maintain a 24/7 watch against the real threat from egg thieves. The purpose-built hide was paid for by the project, and species protection costs were match funded by the LIFE project also. Staff presence is backed up by police operational orders to ensure a rapid response by the police in the event of an incident. The safeguarding the roseates is also backed up with a sophisticated CCTV system, which is upgraded this year with life funding. These cameras are highly sensitive and efficient and able us to see well into the night. Alongside the CCTV system, there are also 3 wildlife cams with sound, whereby live views of the roseate terns and puffins are accessible on the web. Both camera systems give us a deeper insight into the behaviour and the needs of the roseates, with a cam inside a nest box giving us intimate insight into the roseate nesting behaviour. Maritime turf was the main vegetation cover on the plateau on Coquet, but this has given way to Yorkshire fog over the years, which now dominates and has an impact both above and below ground, swamping nest sites and trapping puffins. Rabbits used to inhabit the island, but they had no impact on the Yorkshire fog. Biosecurity has been stepped up on Coquet following an incursion by a rat in 2017 and an otter in 2019. The otterproof fence was installed using life funding in readiness for the 2020 season. However, problems of injury to birds by the fence needs further looking at. A detailed large gull management programme has been in place since 2000 to reduce predation and also the numbers of nesting large gulls and their associated territorial gains at the expense of the terns. This is reviewed annually with Natural England. A gull warden has been based on Coquet Island for the entire duration of the LIFE project, funded by the LIFE project. Gull scaring has been a large part of this work and various techniques deployed, mainly using remote alarm callers, active human disturbance and the use of laser guns. Rogue gull control is our last resort, licensed by Natural England. The large gull management work on Coquet is based on research and monitoring. This work has been focused through a PhD for the last 5 years on Coquet Island, looking at the impact of large gulls on the tern assemblage, using observations, tagging, pellet analysis and the effectiveness of laser as a scaring tool. Recommendations from this work will help guide future gull management work with the RSPB in discussions with Natural England. The increased incidence of summer storms is becoming a problem for Coquet, especially for the lower roseate tern terraces, which are rather exposed, as well as feeding ability of terns, not to mention the security of the hide and the signage. The pipefish scare in 2004 highlighted the fragility of the marine ecosystem, with the loss that year of the sand eel population in the waters around our coast. The recovery since then is indicated by the success of puffin numbers perhaps, and also of course helps sustain the roseate tern population, amongst other species on Coquet. Turning to the management of the reserve around the roseate terns, this began following a visit to Rockabill. The techniques used there were introduced to Coquet in 2000 with immediate results. Initially 50 boxes were put up on the 3-tier terrace with the help from volunteers. And now the gradual expansion of the terraces each year and the addition of shingle helps to draw in more and more roseate terns. The importance of shingle will be seen later at the end of this presentation. In parallel with the roseate habitat provision, work has been carried out to encourage common terns, a species closely linked to the success of roseates. Large rafts, each with a chick shelter and shingle, have been placed along the inland boundary of the roseate tern terraces to suppress the rank grass and offer shelter for common tern chicks. The roseate tern terrace is on the right-hand side of this photograph. The success of nest boxes has been obvious on Coquet, offering protection from the weather and protection against predators. There are more than 300 boxes available, with more planned for the future. Puffins and rock pipits have also used the boxes. Regular box checks every 6 days of the entire colony has enabled us to monitor efficiently the progress of the breeding pairs, the clutch size and the productivity. Ringing and subsequent ring reading is carried out with enthusiasm. David will allude to this later. The Coquet Roseate success story continues to offer hope for roseate terns in the UK, with numbers increasing to a record 130 this year. At this point, I'll hand over to David to bring you up to date with this year's outcomes on Coquet.
Thanks, Paul. Right, so I'm just going to give a quick summary of the 2020 roseate tern season on Coquet. Despite the pretty horrendous summer that we had out here this year, with plenty of wind and rain, the rosies fared reasonably well, as hopefully the next few slides will show. So starting with clutch size, it was a relatively good season at 1.6 eggs per pair, although as you can see from this graph, we are seeing a slight downward trend in the colony over the years. We saw a number of 3-egg clutches this year and even a single 4-egg clutch, which we think was laid by 2 females in the same box. Unfortunately, only one of these larger clutches was successful, which is possibly due to the difficulty in the birds incubating the larger surface area. So next, on to productivity. This graph doesn't make it look too good this season, as we've been fortunate to have a couple of really good years in 2017 and 2019. However, 0.94 isn't bad at all given the summer we had, with very wet and windy weather throughout June and a large portion of July. Fish stocks didn't appear quite as plentiful as previous seasons, which may have contributed to the lower figure. Certainly it was a season where we lost almost half of all bee chicks, but despite this, still 122 youngsters successfully fledged from the island. This is the 4th year of ringing all roseate terns with the new 1 ring. Prior to 2017, all rosies were ringed with both a BTO and rosy special ring. This obviously doubled the time it took to ring each bird, not to mention the added strain potentially on a chick just a matter of days old receiving 2 rings. The new 1 ring scheme has been a great success, and we spend a lot of time on Coquet reading the rings of birds with telescopes. This season we were able to observe rosies which had been ringed in 2017 now returning to successfully breed on the island. Of all adult rings read, we were able to work out the colony of origin of that bird, so where its natal colony was, which takes us nicely on to the next slide. The black line on this graph represents the total number of breeding pairs each year on Coquet since 2006, with 130 pairs this season, as Paul mentioned earlier. The other lines represent the percentage of adult birds whose natal colony was Coquet, which are represented in blue, or elsewhere, which are represented in red, mostly from the Irish colonies of Rockabill and Ladies Island Lake. As you can see from the graph, ring reading has revealed a fairly impressive percentage increase in Coquet birds, going from just 20% in 2006 to 66% this year. Previously, the Coquet colony was reliant on immigration from the Irish colonies to sustain it. This graph is showing that Coquet is moving towards becoming self-sustaining, which will hopefully in the future make Coquet a source for other UK colonies. And finally, this is just a nice graph to show the success of the life programme on Coquet Island. Each point on this graph represents a weekly monitoring visit to the colony for the last 5 seasons, with each year in a different colour. In the 5 years of rosy life, we can see that the colony has grown from 104 pairs in 2016 to 130 pairs this year. Considering the target was just 100 pairs, which was reached in the very first year of the project, it's been an incredibly successful 5 years. We also witnessed large numbers of young adults whilst ring reading towards the end of the season prospecting in nest boxes, which bodes really well for the future of the Coquet Island colony. We're just hoping for a better summer in 2021 compared to what we had this year. And now I'll hand back to Paul to finish up.
Thanks, David. And to finish off, just a mosaic of images of the impact made by the LIFE project on Coquet. The LIFE project was launched at Baltic Centre for Contemporary Art with a week-long celebration of conservation activities for children. But it was actually a triple launch, with switching on the live link wildlife cams from Coquet, the inauguration of the Coquet Island virtual reality experience, and last but not least, unveiling the Roseate Tern beer with a beer tasting session at the Baltic. The LIFE project also funded a new rib for the reserve, the unique night hide for guarding the Roseate Tern colony, the nest boxes and terracing substrate, optics, a van for carrying materials to and from the reserve, the production of the RSPB's first workshop manual for the reserve, exchange visits of course to organisations within the partnership, and even a macerator for the loo, to name but a few. Looking to the future, we aim to fine-tune the large gull management, guided by recommendations from the PhD research. We've got an opportunity to look at detailed diet studies of roseate terns using the established and proven box-cam technology. We also want to continue extending the roseate tern terracing, substrate and nest boxes in areas favoured by roseates. Also incorporate the LIFE recommendations into the site management plan process, which is due for review at the end of this year, and continue partnership working to strive for best practice. And to finish, David has prepared a short video of the Coquet roseates in 2020 for you to enjoy. So it's thank you from the Roseate Tern RSPB Coquet team, to Daniel and the LIFE team, our LIFE partners and now friends, the Coqueteers, and to Northumberland Estates, the landowners who support our efforts to the drive to protect and safeguard roseate terns for the future.
Well, I hope you enjoyed Paul's talk. That was really amazing and a superb video. The Roseate Tern webcams are a fantastic resource that will allow us to follow the intimate details of their home life and will be well worth looking at next year. Our second talk tonight is about how best to manage conflicts on Coquet Island between the large gulls that want to breed there and the roseate terns that might be eaten by them. Our speaker is Ibrahim Alfarwi, who spent the last few years studying the problem for his PhD. Ibrahim hails from Syria, and his cooking on the island is legendary. Unfortunately, you won't be able to sample that tonight, but instead, Ibrahim's work has given some important insights into how we might manage the large gull problem, and I'll now hand you over to Ibrahim so that he can tell you more about it.
Hello everyone, I hope you can hear me and see the slides clearly. This is Ibrahim Alfarwi. I am a PhD student at Newcastle University. I'm working with Dr. Chris Tern and Dr. Richard Bevan, and my research project was about investigating the effects of predation on roseate tern colony by the breeding large gulls on Coquet Island. Thanks again for having me for these talks. I gave you the same talk last November, and at that time I was in the start of my data analysis and writing up my thesis. Paul and David already mentioned all the aspects about the study area and the historical background about Coquet Island. And here just it's worth to mention again that the RSPB managed Coquet Island since 1970 with the efforts of a Natural History Society of Northumbria. For me, in this talk, I'm happy to present for the first time my research outputs on Coquet Island. I will reuse this slide from Paul's presentation just to say here that the large gulls management plan or predation management on Coquet Island contains two elements of controlling. A bottom top control by providing the roseate tern chicks with a box shelter that's giving them extra protection from the weather conditions and from predation, and top bottom by targeting the predator directly, and mainly here I'm talking about the gulls, by using different methods, of course, laser hazing, scarer, human active disturbance, or egg collection, etc. And this came mainly because the large gulls are the main threats for roseate tern colony on Coquet Island by two dimensions: predation or competition for nesting space over Coquet Island. There are two species of large gulls breeding over Coquet Island: lesser black-backed gull and herring gull. Herring gull mainly on the cliffs or on the edge of the plateau, and great black-backed gull not breeding on Coquet Island, but it's always there on the plateau or intertidal area. So in this slide, I would like just to show you here that in the late 80s, early 90s, the large gulls culling was stopped in the UK, leading to dramatic increase for the large gulls population over Coquet Island in early 2000. And then after applying the large gulls disturbance in that time and controlling the large gulls here, the large gulls population declined again, allowing the roseate tern colony to start recovery until recent record with 130 pairs in 2020. I put this slide just to show you to what extent the pressure of large gulls competition for nesting over Coquet Island could be, and this was in 2002, and you can see that the large gulls occupying more than 70% of Coquet Island nesting space in that season. In 2001, Natural England published a review for the effectiveness of large gulls culling, and in the light of this review, it was suggested that you have to get a license to control the gulls, and you have to support your claim for this license with an evidence showing the efficacy of controlling large gulls in your management plan. Then in 2010, after 10 years of controlling large gulls on Coquet Island, Natural England recommend to keep few or some large gulls breeding successfully on Coquet Island. And this basically came in the light of noticeable decline of large gulls population nationwide, with unknown reason for this declining. Therefore, and to adopt this approach to keep few or some large gulls breeding successfully on Coquet Island, a conflict occurred in the management plan because we are controlling protected predator species on protected prey species. This forms the most complicated case in conservation management. To solve this conflict, we need to gain the full knowledge about this relationship between the predator and the prey. This was the core of my research. I wanted to understand the nature of this relationship between the large gulls and Roseate tern on Coquet Island. I need to understand where this predation pressure came from. Was it from the breeding large gulls on Coquet Island or the loafing large gulls? What factors affecting this relationship? What factors affecting this predation rate? And then by this understanding, I was aiming to re-evaluate the management plan and then see if we can adopt this approach without affecting the Roseate tern colony recovery. However, the predator-prey relationship is very complicated and it's difficult to put it in one ecological framework. The predation itself is still a controversial issue, whether it's a regulating or limiting factor, especially when the predator itself is a keystone species in the food web. Therefore, in my research, I try to use a range of methods trying to understand the dynamic of this relationship between the large gulls and Roseate tern from different aspects. So starting about direct observation, I did my observation directly from the jetty, just opposite of the main colony area. And this was the view from the height, showing the large gulls coming over the terrace. And I was recording the behavior of the large gulls over the terrace here. I mean predation, successful predation, just flying over, or dread, or unknown attack, successful attack, etc. The observed area were divided to 4 sections, A, B, C, D. A and C intertidal area, and here there's a sandy beach as well. Area B and D contains the main Roseate tern colony with the nest boxes over these 2 areas. The view sometimes will be like this, but the challenge is most of the days we have the foggy weather and the visibility wasn't good enough to see what's happening over the terrace. This add more work to do, which is to find the nests over Coquet Island. Coquet Island, small island, so that's allowed us to do entire survey to find the nests. And this was done by a team from 5 to 10 sometimes volunteers, without leaving gap more than 2 meters to find the large gull's nest on Coquet Island. And you can see the vegetation is getting really long enough to hide and make it difficult to find the well camouflaged nest for the large gulls over Coquet Island. When I was able to locate the nest was marked, and then I was doing regular visit to the nest to choose the perfect time to catch the gulls. We set up a modified wash net and the walk-in trap. And basically I'm mentioning this here because I want to say that the large gulls on Coquet Island gain a lot of knowledge and good skills to escape from the net and avoid even catching them after this long time of management. They were very alert from our presence and any materials around their nests. So successful story with catching the gulls will be end up by tagging them with GPS tags and put some marks on them as well to follow them, their movement over the terrace, and with as well Darvik colored rings. Some large gulls' nests were observed by the camera traps. We were aiming to see the diet of the large gulls' chicks, what the main food or prey brought by the parents to their nestlings. Two types of GPS tags were used in this research: Mataki tags, this one you can see it here, and the other one, GSM GPS tags as well, used in 2017 for one herring gull and one lesser black-backed gull. Pellets were collected in 2016 and 2017, and 2016 were collected and analyzed morphologically, and in 2017 were collected to use metabarcoding DNA analysis to see the diet components for the large gulls on Coquet Island. Moving on to talk about the result of this research. I will start with this graph. In this graph, the blue line representative for the large gulls events over the study area. The green line representative for the large gulls number over the study area. And we can see here there are two main changing points occurred in the large gulls event and large gulls number during the breeding season. First one, declining the large gulls number and events in the first week in June. This might be because the large gulls egg collection occurred at that time, and the availability of other chicks for other species, and I mean here the black-headed gull and eider duck chicks and other 10 species of chicks and fish brought by the boffin to their bufflings. And secondly, we have this changing point occurred in the last week in July, with this noticeable increase in the large gulls events and large gulls numbers over the study area. This might be occurred because the chicks for the other species already fledged, and we just have the tern over the terrace. Secondly, and lately we have since 2013 sandwich tern colony starting lately in the sandy beach close to the main terrace, and they were like in the open sandy beach and very attractive and exposed for predation by the large gulls. And in this mosaic graph we can see the majority of the events occurring over the intertidal area and over the north terrace of the Roseate tern, and less over the main Roseate tern colony. However, the majority of the events over the main colony, I mean the South Beach, occurring at the end of the season. I've mapped all the located nests for the large gulls over the plateau and compared them with the 2002 maps. And then I found they are still using the same area of Coquet, but of course with this management plan and all the measures for controlling the gulls, they are occupying now less area comparing with 2002. Tagging the adult and sub-adults as well in general, showing that focus or movement around the breeding area, but not coming to the terrace. Hence, all the outputs of the Mataki tags showed the adult and sub-adults tagged large gulls using the Coquet Island majority in their activity, with more than 90% or 95% of the tags occurred or overlapped over Coquet Island. I put this picture here just to show you an example of the pictures I've gotten from the camera trap over the one of the study nests, and it wasn't useful at all to study the large gulls diet for many reasons, mainly the mobility of the chicks all around the nest. So most of the events occurring out of the camera scene. And secondly, the vegetation over Coquet Island wasn't allowing us to see exactly the details and the ID of the prey brought by the large gulls to their chicks. Pellets analysis showed that the large gulls using different sources for feeding, and they are vary between the local marine and terrestrial area, and showed around like 35 to 40% of their diet were obtained from Coquet Island, and I mean by local food here, mainly birds. And the main message came from the metabarcoding DNA analysis for the large gulls pellet, showed there's no DNA for the roseate tern in the pellets, which was expected comparing with the low number of roseate tern comparing with other species on the island. However, some pellets showed DNA came from the Arctic and common tern, and a lot of pellets showed DNA came from the puffin and black-headed gull. And in addition to this, we found a lot of fresh killed tern, common tern and Arctic tern around the nest of large gulls over the plateau. With having extra 5 minutes for this presentation, I would like to present my work as well for using the laser hazing in controlling large gulls as a non-lethal tool for first time in conservation management. So in 2017 and 2018, we deployed the laser hazing as a non-lethal tool to control large gulls and discourage them breeding over Coquet Island. The experiment was conducted during March and first 2 weeks in April before the arrival of other species to Coquet. I put these two videos just to show you how the laser beam looks like during the foggy weather and early morning time with the low light ambient. I found the laser hazing was very effective during the low light ambient conditions in evening time or foggy weather, mist weather, and it was interestingly affected negatively by the wind speed. It was very effective during the calm weather, but not through the strong wind conditions. This might be linked because the birds were tucked their head underneath their wings, so they couldn't notice the laser beam targeting them. Therefore, one of the recommendations of this experiment to adopt using the laser hazing as a non-lethal tool to control the large gulls. Of course, it should be mixed with other measures and other applications to avoid the large gulls habituating the laser hazing. So in the conclusion of my research about adopting the new approach of keeping few or some large gulls breeding successfully on Coquet Island, will it be possible? It will, but we have to be restricted with time and the area. And I want to say here, we can allow for a few large gulls, the very early breeding large gulls in the north part of Coquet Island to breed successfully at the start of the season, because at that time it will be less pressure on the roseate tern colony with the availability of other species chicks and having them in the north part of the island will minimize the pressure on the main colony. And at the same time, we have to continue all the other measures for controlling the large gulls. Big thanks for all the volunteers who helped doing this project. A huge thanks to the coqueteers and the amazing team on Coquet Island. Thanks indeed, Paul Morrison, for the enormous support and help during this research. And big thanks to my supervisor for all the advice and support and help to achieve this project. For all the funders for this project, especially Daniel Beek, the manager of the LIFE project, big thanks. Thank you very much for your listening and any
Well, that was a great talk and some very useful research results. Thanks, Ibrahim. And I'd like to thank both of our speakers for their brilliant talks. And thanks too to all of you for joining us this evening.